she said. "I'm not ready." But the rancher took her, and it changed everything. Ava had never been to a place like this before. The city streets, with their constant noise and flashing lights, felt like a distant memory as she drove up the winding dirt road that led to the ranch. Tall pines leaned over the path like silent guardians, and the late afternoon sun painted everything in warm gold. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, taking in the vast stretches of land that seemed to go on forever. The ranch looked like it had been plucked from a painting, fields dotted with wildflowers, horses grazing in the distance, and a wooden fence that curved along the hills. Ava had come here for one simple reason: to escape. Life in the city had become suffocating, full of deadlines, crowded subways, and endless noise. She needed space, time to think, and a break from people who always had opinions about what she should do or who she should be. The ranch promised silence, fresh air, and freedom, a chance to reconnect with herself. Yet, as she pulled up to the main house, a sense of nervous excitement mixed with fear settled in her chest. She had never lived like this before. She had never really been alone with herself in such open spaces. The house was charming, rustic, yet welcoming. Its wide porch had a few rocking chairs and a swing that moved gently with the breeze. Smoke curled from the chimney, carrying the scent of wood and something homey she couldn't quite name. She stepped out of the car, stretching her arms above her head as if trying to shake off the city's hold on her. Her suitcase hit the wooden floor with a soft thud as she walked inside, and the quiet was almost shocking after the constant hum of traffic she was used to. A voice broke the silence, low but strong, and filled with a calm authority that made her start slightly. "You must be Ava." Luke! The rancher she had heard about from the brief phone call weeks ago. He was tall, with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they were carved from years of hard work. His face was weathered in a way that suggested both strength and kindness, and his eyes held a sharp, intelligent glint. He offered her a small, confident smile. "I'm Luke. Welcome to the ranch." Ava nodded, unsure what to say. "Thanks, it's beautiful," she managed. "It's a lot bigger than it looks from the road," Luke said, glancing outside. "You'll get used to it." She followed him through the house, noticing the simple yet warm decor. Wooden beams crossed the ceiling, and framed photos of the land, the animals, and the people who had lived there hung on the walls. The air smelled faintly of hay and leather, a mix so different from the city's exhaust and perfume. She felt her shoulders relax just a little. "I hope you're ready for a summer of work," Luke said lightly, though there was a seriousness in his tone. "There's always something that needs attention around here. I don't expect you to be an expert, but I do expect effort." Ava laughed nervously. "I'm not really sure what I'm getting myself into." "I'm not ready for much, honestly." Luke's eyes flicked toward her, reading more than she intended. "Not ready? That's okay. You'll learn fast enough." His tone was firm but patient, not mocking. "Most people who come here aren't ready. But the ranch doesn't wait for anyone to be ready. It just is." Death to the turncoat. She wanted to protest, to insist that she needed more time, that she wasn't used to outdoor work, that she preferred books to boots, and city streets to muddy fields. But something in his calm presence made her hesitate. There was no pressure, no rush, just an unspoken promise that she could try and maybe even succeed. Luke led her outside to meet the animals. Horses, large and gentle, moved lazily in the pastures, their coats shining under the sun. Chickens clucked and scratched at the dirt, while a few cows watched quietly from a distance. Ava had never spent much time around animals, and she felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. One of the horses, a tall bay with a white stripe down its face, moved toward her, sniffing her hand cautiously. "You don't have to touch him if you don't want to," Luke said, noticing her hesitation. "But animals have a way of showing you who they are, and who you are, too." Ava smiled faintly, extending her hand slowly. The horse sniffed again, then pressed its nose gently against her palm. She laughed softly at the surprising warmth of the moment. "I think he likes me," she said. "He does," Luke agreed. You'll get used to the rest soon enough. Over the next few hours, Ava was shown around the ranch. She learned about the barns, the feed storage, the tools, and the daily chores. Luke explained everything patiently, never rushing, but his efficiency was clear. He moved with a confidence and ease that made everything seem simple, even when she knew it wasn't. He showed her how to carry hay bales, how to fill the water troughs, and how to approach the horses so they didn't spook. Ava tried to follow his instructions, fumbling occasionally but laughing at herself when she made mistakes. By sunset, they stood on a small hill overlooking the main pasture. The sky was painted in shades of pink, orange, and purple, and the mountains in the distance glowed softly. Ava felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she was missing. The city's chaos seemed impossibly far away. "I think I'm going to like it here," she admitted quietly. Luke glanced at her, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I think you will. But remember, it won't always be easy. This place has a way of testing you. Sometimes it's the work, sometimes it's yourself." Ava shivered slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. She wasn't used to being tested, at least not like this. She had spent so much of her life avoiding challenges, avoiding discomfort, yet something about the ranch and about Luke made her want to try. That evening, after a simple dinner of roasted vegetables and fresh bread, Ava sat on the porch, looking up at the stars. The sky was vast and clear, a million tiny lights stretching endlessly. The silence was comforting, almost like a friend. She thought about the words she had said earlier. "I'm not ready." Was she ever ready for anything? City life had taught her to plan, to prepare, to guard herself against disappointment. But out here, with the scent of earth and animals filling her lungs, and with Luke's calm, steady presence, she wondered if readiness was just an excuse. Maybe sometimes life demanded that you step forward, even if you weren't sure. Luke came out to the porch quietly, holding 2 mugs of steaming tea. "Thought you might like this," he said, handing her one. She accepted it, warming her hands around the cup. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he added. "Sometimes the land speaks for itself." Ava nodded, feeling the truth in that statement. She sipped her tea, watching the fireflies begin their slow dance across the fields. For the first time in a long time, she felt present, not worried about the past or anxious about the future. "Just here! Just now!" "Thank you," she whispered. Luke smiled, settling into the rocking chair next to hers. "No need to thank me. You'll be doing plenty for the ranch soon enough. But I have a feeling you'll be doing plenty for yourself, too." Ava felt a small spark of excitement in her chest, even as she reminded herself that she still wasn't ready. But for the first time, that statement felt less like a shield and more like a challenge. Maybe she didn't have to be ready. Maybe being here, learning, struggling, and growing was the only preparation she truly needed. As the night deepened and the stars shone brighter, Ava realized that her summer at the ranch wasn't going to be a simple escape. It was going to change her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. And somehow, she knew that Luke, the rancher who had taken her under his quiet, steady guidance, was going to be a part of that journey. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't in years: hope. The next morning, Ava woke to the sound of roosters crowing and sunlight spilling through the wooden blinds. It was an unfamiliar, almost magical sound, far different from the blaring alarms and car horns of the city. She stretched and rubbed her eyes, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today would be her first real day working on the ranch, and though part of her was eager, another part of her worried she wouldn't measure up. When she stepped outside, Luke was already in the barn, moving with the kind of ease that came from years of routine. His broad shoulders carried the weight of his work without effort, and his hands, though rough and calloused, moved gently with the animals. "Morning, Ava," he called without looking back. "Coffee's on the porch. Grab it before we start." Ava nodded and went to the porch, carrying her mug of steaming coffee with both hands. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of earth, hay, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. She watched the sun rise slowly behind the hills, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and orange. For a moment, she just breathed, letting the quiet settle in her chest. Luke joined her a few minutes later, carrying a small bundle of tools. "Today we start with the basics," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Feeding the animals, cleaning the stalls, checking the fences. Nothing fancy, but everything important." Ava followed him to the barn, feeling slightly out of place in her jeans and worn boots. The barn smelled strongly of hay and animals, and she wrinkled her nose, laughing softly at herself. "I've never done anything like this before," she admitted. "You'll learn," Luke said, smiling. "We all start somewhere. The first task was feeding the horses." Ava watched as Luke measured the hay and grain, showing her exactly how much each animal needed. He handed her a bundle and demonstrated how to offer it without startling the horse. Ava mimicked his movements carefully, her hands trembling slightly. The horse nudged her gently, and she laughed, a sound of pure delight she hadn't realized she could make anymore. "You're a natural," Luke said. "Or at least, you have a good start." Ava blushed.
"I'm just lucky he likes me."
"Luck has little to do with it," Luke replied. "It's about paying attention. Animals can tell when you're calm, when you're unsure, when you're patient. They respond to that." For the next few hours, Ava worked alongside Luke, cleaning stalls, carrying water buckets, and learning to handle the animals gently but firmly. It was exhausting work, her muscles aching in ways she hadn't felt in years, yet with every task, she felt a small sense of accomplishment. Something about working with her hands, seeing immediate results, made her feel alive in a way her city life never had. During a short break, Ava sat on the edge of the barn, wiping sweat from her forehead. Luke handed her a bottle of water. "You're doing well," he said. "But don't be afraid to ask questions. That's how you learn." Ava looked at him thoughtfully. "You make it look so easy," she admitted. "It's not easy," Luke said, pausing. "Every day teaches you something new. You'll see." By midday, the sun was high and warm, and Ava's initial awkwardness had faded. She moved with more confidence, her hands less unsure, her steps more deliberate. Luke noticed the change and offered her a small nod of approval. For someone like Ava, who had spent so long doubting herself, that nod meant more than words could express. After lunch, Luke led her to the fenced pastures where the cows grazed. "These need to be checked every day," he explained. "Fences, gates, the animals themselves. You never know when something might go wrong." Ava followed, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the sheer size of the ranch. It seemed endless, each field blending into the next. But as she walked, she noticed small details. The way the horses' ears flicked at sounds, the way the grass bent under their hooves, the soft lowing of the cows. The world here moved slower, more deliberate, and Ava found herself relaxing into its rhythm. Luke taught her how to inspect the fences, showing her where wear and tear could appear, how to tighten loose boards, and how to secure gates properly. Ava listened carefully, asking questions when she didn't understand. Luke answered patiently, never rushing, but always expecting her to try. Slowly, she began to feel capable in a way she hadn't before. By mid-afternoon, Ava was drenched in sweat, her arms sore, and her hands blistered from the hard work. Yet there was a light in her eyes, a satisfaction she couldn't hide. Luke noticed it, the quiet pride that came from doing something challenging and seeing results. "You're improving fast," he said as they rested under a tree, drinking water and watching the animals. "Most people take weeks to get this far. I
feel different," Ava admitted. "Like I can actually do this. Like I belong here, even if just a little."
Luke nodded. "That's how it starts. But the land teaches you patience, resilience, and respect, and it shows you your own strength, even when you didn't know it existed." The afternoon passed in a blur of work and learning. Ava began to enjoy the rhythm of the ranch, the simple but meaningful tasks, the quiet moments between chores, and the satisfaction of seeing the animals well cared for. She noticed herself laughing more freely, speaking with more confidence, and feeling a quiet connection to the land she had never expected. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, Luke showed her how to ride one of the horses. "Start slow," he instructed, standing beside the horse as Ava climbed onto the saddle. Her heart raced, her hands gripping the reins nervously. The horse shifted beneath her, large and powerful, and she felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. "Relax," Luke said. "You're safe. Trust yourself, and trust him." She took a deep breath and let the horse move at a slow walk, guided gently by Luke's steady instructions. Step by step, she began to feel the rhythm, the gentle sway beneath her. By the time the sun had set completely, she was riding confidently along the edge of the pasture, the wind in her hair, and a sense of freedom she hadn't known she could feel. After returning the horse to the stable, Luke led her to the porch with mugs of tea. The night was calm, the stars bright and clear. Ava sat quietly, letting the cool breeze wash over her. "I didn't know it could be like this," she said softly. "I didn't know I could enjoy work this much." Luke smiled, handing her the mug. "It's not about enjoying it. It's about learning, growing, and finding strength you didn't know you had. That's what this place does to people. And I have a feeling it's going to do the same for you." Ava sipped her tea, thinking about the day. She had arrived feeling unsure, hesitant, and resistant to the idea of change. Yet by evening, she felt a subtle shift in herself. The city girl who had always been cautious, who always said she wasn't ready for challenges, was beginning to see that readiness wasn't a requirement for growth. Courage and effort mattered more. As they sat in silence watching the stars, Ava realized that Luke had become more than just a teacher or a guide. His calm patience, quiet strength, and the way he noticed even the smallest details about her efforts had created a sense of trust she hadn't felt in years. He wasn't forcing her to change. He was simply showing her a way to discover herself. By the end of the night, Ava felt a quiet confidence that she hadn't expected to find on her first full day at the ranch. She knew tomorrow would bring more challenges, more work, and more lessons, but she also knew she was ready to face them. Not because she felt prepared, but because she was learning to trust herself. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the distant sounds of the ranch, horses shifting in their stalls, the soft clucking of chickens, the occasional bark of a dog, she thought about her earlier words. "I'm not ready." Perhaps, she realized, being ready wasn't the point. The point was to step forward anyway, to try, and to allow life to teach her along the way. And somehow she knew that the ranch and Luke were going to teach her more than she could ever imagine. The summer had settled into a warm, steady rhythm. Ava had grown more confident in her daily tasks on the ranch. She knew the animals, the land, and the routines much better now. Luke had noticed the change too. The way she handled the horses, her careful attention to the cows, and the small pride in her movements when she completed a task correctly. Yet despite her growing comfort, a restlessness lingered within her. She was beginning to realize that life here, though peaceful and grounding, also demanded responsibility, courage, and adaptability. One afternoon, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. Luke had been checking the fences in the western fields when he noticed the first low rumble of thunder. "Storm's coming," he said quietly, more to himself than to Ava, who was nearby brushing down one of the horses. He straightened up, scanning the sky with a practiced eye. "We'll need to secure everything. Horses, cows, equipment. This might be a strong one." Ava's stomach tightened. She had never experienced a storm like this before. In the city, storms were distant flashes of light and heavy rain. Here, storms moved fast and carried the power to change everything in their path. She followed Luke as he moved with purpose, directing her to help where she could. "Check the gates," he instructed. "Make sure all the horses are safe in their stalls." "I'll handle the feed shed." Ava hurried through the tasks, her hands working quickly but carefully. The wind was picking up, bending the trees and scattering leaves across the fields. She felt a pang of fear as a gust nearly knocked over one of the empty water buckets. But Luke's calm voice guided her. Focus, Ava. One thing at a time. You've done this before. You can do it again. By the time the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, the ranch was mostly secure. Luke moved through the barn, checking the horses and ensuring that each animal was calm and safe. Ava watched him, noticing how his strength and composure were unwavering, even in the face of the storm. His hands were steady, his instructions clear, and his presence comforting. She realized that his calmness wasn't just about experience, it was about care. He cared for the land, the animals, and the people around him, and that care created a quiet power that steadied everyone. The storm hit with a force Ava had never imagined. Wind tore across the fields, rattling fences and sending tree branches tumbling. Rain hammered the roof of the barn in a relentless rhythm, and the animals shifted nervously in their stalls. Ava's heart raced as she helped calm a panicked horse, speaking softly to it, running her hands along its mane just as Luke had taught her. "You've got this," he said, coming over to steady her when the horse nuzzled her too forcefully. "Remember your training. Breathe. Stay calm. They can feel your fear, but they can also feel your confidence." Hours passed, and the storm showed no sign of easing. A flash of lightning struck near the far pasture, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. Ava froze for a moment, her hands gripping the bucket tighter. "We need to check the western fence," Luke said, his voice steady but urgent. "It may have taken damage in the storm." Ava followed him into the rain, mud squishing under her boots. Water soaked her hair and clothes, but she pushed forward, determined to help. They reached the fence to find a section of wood broken and leaning dangerously. Luke assessed it quickly. "We'll need to hold it in place until we can fix it properly," he said. "Help me move these posts." Together, they worked against the wind, holding the fence steady. The rain stung their faces and lightning flashed nearby, making Ava's heart pound. But Luke's presence beside her gave her courage. He didn't speak much, but every glance, every instruction was enough to steady her nerves. For the first time, Ava felt the depth of her own strength. She wasn't just surviving the storm. She was contributing, helping, making a difference. As they finished securing the fence, Luke glanced at her, water dripping from his hair and clothes plastered to his chest. "You're stronger than you realize," he said, his voice low but earnest. Ava looked at him, surprised. She had always thought of herself as cautious, hesitant, someone who needed time and preparation. But here, in the middle of a storm, she realized that courage wasn't about not feeling fear. It was about facing it anyway. The rain began to lighten, and the storm slowly moved on. They walked back to the barn exhausted but satisfied, the mud caking their boots and clothes. Ava's hands were sore, her muscles aching, but a sense of pride warmed her despite the chill. She looked at Luke, noticing the same exhaustion mirrored in his face, yet there was a quiet joy there as well. He had seen this land in storms far worse than this, and yet he faced them with determination and care. She wanted to be like that, steady, reliable, unshakable when it mattered most. That evening, after the storm had passed and the sun was setting, Luke and Ava tended to the animals, making sure nothing had been injured and everything was accounted for. The ground was muddy, the barn smelled of wet hay, but there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. Ava noticed small things she had never noticed before. The way a horse nuzzled another, the soft lowing of a cow that had calmed after being frightened, the way the land seemed to breathe again after the storm. They finally returned to the porch, sitting in silence for a moment, drinking mugs of warm tea. Ava felt a quiet contentment she had never known before. The city had never taught her the satisfaction of facing something difficult and seeing it through, of standing tall in the face of fear. Here, with mud on her boots and the scent of rain in the air, she understood a truth that words couldn't fully capture. Growth came from challenge, not comfort.
Luke looked at her thoughtfully. "You handled yourself well today," he said.
"Most people would have panicked, but you kept going. You stayed calm, you stayed focused, and you helped save what needed to be saved." Ava smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through her chest.
"I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted.
"You made me believe I could do it." Luke's eyes softened, and for a moment Ava felt something unspoken pass between them. A connection deeper than words, built on trust, shared experience, and quiet admiration. "You had it in you all along," he said. "I just helped you see it." That night, Ava lay in her bed, thinking about the storm. She remembered the fear she had felt, the rush of adrenaline, the satisfaction of completing each task. She thought about Luke, his calm strength, and the way he had guided her without ever making her feel weak or incapable. And she realized something she hadn't expected. The storm had changed her. It had shown her that she was stronger than she thought, braver than she believed, and capable of more than she had ever imagined. The next morning, the sun rose on a ranch that seemed renewed, washed clean by the storm. Birds chirped, the horses grazed quietly, and the land smelled of fresh rain and earth. Ava felt a sense of peace, coupled with a new energy. She knew that the challenges she had faced during the storm were just the beginning of what the summer would teach her, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned that she could face what came her way, that she could rise to the occasion, and that she could grow in ways she hadn't imagined. Luke noticed her quiet determination as they worked side by side. He gave her a small nod of approval, and she returned it with a smile. In that simple exchange, Ava felt the unspoken bond between them deepen. They had faced something real together, and it had changed both of them. As the day went on, Ava continued her chores with renewed confidence. She moved with purpose, her hands steady, her mind clear. She noticed the small details, the way the horses shifted their weight, the way the cows followed her calmly, the smell of wet earth mixing with the sweet hay. Each moment reinforced the lesson she had learned from the storm: patience, courage, focus, and trust. By evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills once more, Ava and Luke sat on the porch, sipping tea in companionable silence. The storm had passed, but its impact lingered. Ava felt a new sense of respect for Luke, for the ranch, and for herself. She understood now that life was full of unexpected challenges, and that true strength came not from avoiding them, but from facing them head-on. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what the rest of the summer might hold. She realized that she was no longer the hesitant, cautious city girl who had arrived at the ranch. She was growing, learning, and becoming someone stronger, braver, and more capable. And she knew that Luke, in his quiet, steady way, had been a part of that transformation. As the stars appeared overhead, Ava felt a sense of gratitude she hadn't known she could feel. She had faced fear, embraced challenge, and discovered her own resilience. And in the quiet moments of the evening, with the ranch stretching endlessly before her, she understood that this summer would change her life forever. The morning after the storm was calm and bright. Sunlight filtered through the trees, painting the fields in soft gold. The ranch was alive with quiet activity. The gentle lowing of cows, the rustle of horses moving in their stalls, the faint cluck of chickens. Ava stepped outside, inhaling the crisp, clean air, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Everything looked refreshed, renewed, as if the land itself had been reborn after the storm. She walked slowly to the barn, enjoying the gentle rhythm of life around her. Luke was already there, inspecting the fences and gates with his usual steady confidence. He looked up as she approached, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Good morning," he said. "Ready for another day?" Ava nodded, a sense of determination and quiet confidence filling her. "I am," she replied. For the first time, she felt like she truly belonged here, not just as a visitor, but as someone who could contribute, someone who could make a difference. The morning passed in a familiar rhythm. Ava fed the animals, cleaned the stalls, and checked the fences, moving with a grace and efficiency that had surprised even her. Luke watched her with a quiet pride, noting how far she had come since the first day she had stepped onto the ranch. She no longer hesitated. She no longer doubted herself. The city girl who had claimed she wasn't ready was gone, replaced by someone who had learned to face challenges, to adapt, and to grow. By midday, they had finished the morning chores. Luke suggested a break, and they sat on the porch with mugs of tea, the sun warm on their shoulders. Ava glanced out at the fields, noticing the beauty in every detail. The way the wind moved the grass, the way the horses grazed quietly, the scent of fresh hay and earth mixing in the air. She felt a deep sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't known in years. "You've changed?" Luke said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Ava looked at him, curious. I
guess I have, she admitted. I never thought I'd feel grounded.
Or capable. Or happy like this. Luke nodded, his eyes softening. This place has a way of showing people who they really are. It strips away fear, doubt, and hesitation. It gives you a chance to see your own strength. Ava smiled faintly. And you helped me see it? Luke shrugged. A small, modest gesture. I didn't do anything you couldn't do yourself. I just guided you. You had it in you all along. The rest of the afternoon passed in quiet companionship. They worked side by side, repairing a fence along the far pasture. Luke showed Ava the proper way to secure the posts, and she followed his instructions carefully. There was a sense of harmony in their movements. She lifted, he steadied. She hammered, he adjusted. It wasn't just work. It was a shared rhythm, a connection that spoke louder than words. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Luke suggested a walk through the fields. Ava agreed, feeling a sense of freedom she had never known. They moved through the tall grass, the gentle sway of the plants brushing against their legs, the soft chirping of birds filling the air. For a moment, neither spoke, enjoying the calm and beauty of the evening. You've grown a lot this summer, Luke said, finally breaking the silence. Ava looked at him, sensing the sincerity in his voice. I have, she admitted. I never thought I could handle life here, or handle myself. But I've learned so much about the land, the animals, and about me. Luke nodded, his gaze steady. Growth isn't always easy, but it's worth it. You've shown courage, determination, and patience. You've faced challenges, and you've learned to trust yourself. That's what matters. Ava felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond words. She realized that the person she had been when she arrived, hesitant, unsure, afraid to take risks, was not who she was anymore. She had changed, transformed by the land, by the work, and by the quiet, steady guidance of Luke. As they walked back to the house, Ava felt a new confidence in her steps. The ranch no longer felt like an escape, it felt like home. And Luke was no longer just a guide. He was a friend, a mentor, someone who had helped her see the best in herself. That evening, after dinner, they sat on the porch once more, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. Ava sipped her tea, feeling the cool breeze on her face, the warmth of the mug in her hands. She thought about the summer, the storms, the hard work, and the lessons she had learned. She thought about Luke, his calm presence, his unwavering patience, and the quiet encouragement he had given her every step of the way. I never imagined a summer could change me so much, she said softly. Luke looked at her, his expression unreadable but kind. You were ready all along, he said gently. You just needed a chance to see it. Ava smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude that was difficult to put into words. She realized that readiness wasn't about timing or preparation. It was about courage, effort, and willingness to grow. And she had discovered all of those qualities within herself. The days that followed continued in a joyful rhythm. Ava and Luke worked the ranch, laughed together, and shared quiet moments in the evenings. She learned to ride the horses with confidence, to handle the animals with care, and to appreciate the beauty and simplicity of life on the land. Each day reinforced her transformation, showing her that she was capable, strong, and resilient. One afternoon, as they repaired the final section of a long fence, Ava paused to watch the sunset. The sky was a brilliant mix of gold and crimson, and the fields seemed to glow in the fading light. She felt a sense of peace she had never known in the city, a feeling of belonging that went beyond physical space. You've done well, Luke said, standing beside her. I'm proud of you. Ava looked at him, her heart full. Thank you, she said softly.
For everything. For teaching me, guiding me.
For believing in me. Luke smiled, a small, warm expression that reached his eyes.
You don't need to thank me. You earned it.
Every step, every effort. You made it happen. As night fell, Ava sat quietly on the porch, reflecting on her journey. The summer had been more than she could have imagined. She had arrived hesitant, unsure, and afraid to face challenges. But she was leaving, or rather transforming, into someone stronger, braver, and more confident. She had faced storms, learned new skills, and discovered her own resilience. And perhaps most importantly, she had learned that connection, trust, and shared experience could bring unexpected joy and growth. Luke had been a part of that journey, guiding her without forcing her, showing her strength without overshadowing her. Their bond had deepened naturally, built on respect, trust, and mutual admiration. In the quiet of the night, Ava realized that this summer had changed her life. She was no longer the person who had arrived, uncertain and hesitant. She was someone who had faced challenges, embraced growth, and discovered her own strength. She was ready, not because she had prepared, but because she had lived, learned, and trusted herself along the way. As she looked up at the stars, Ava felt a sense of hope and possibility. The ranch had given her more than lessons in work or animal care. It had given her insight into herself, into courage, and into the quiet power of persistence and patience. And with Luke by her side, she felt a sense of companionship and trust that would remain with her long after the summer ended. The summer concluded with a simple, heartfelt celebration. Friends who had visited the ranch over the months came together to mark the season's end. There was laughter, music, and a sense of community that filled the air.
Ava moved through the celebration with a quiet confidence, greeting people warmly, sharing stories, and feeling a sense of pride in all she had accomplished.
As the evening drew to a close, Ava and Luke stood quietly by the edge of the fields, watching the last light of the sun disappear behind the hills. The air was calm, the land peaceful, and the sky full of stars. Ava took a deep breath, feeling gratitude, growth, and a quiet joy that went beyond words. "Thank you," she said softly, turning to Luke. "For everything!" Luke smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "No need to thank me. You did it yourself. And this is just the beginning of the rest of your life, and of everything you can become." Ava nodded, feeling a sense of completeness and readiness. She had arrived at the ranch unsure, hesitant, and afraid of change. She was leaving with confidence, resilience, and a sense of purpose. She had discovered herself, faced challenges, and embraced growth. And most importantly, she had learned that sometimes life changes everything, not by waiting for you to be ready, but by giving you the courage to step forward anyway.
As they stood together watching the stars, Ava realized that this summer had been more than a season.
She was no longer the person who had claimed she wasn't ready. She was ready in every sense of the word. And with Luke beside her, and the ranch stretching endlessly around them, she knew that her life had changed forever.